What's goody? Hey man, so today we are back again, and today we are going to be ranking each NBA team 1 through 30. This is going to be a long video, so we're just going to get right into it. Now, I want to start this video off by saying this ranking is not the same thing as a standings prediction or a prediction in any way, shape, or form for the season. I'm not trying to sit here and predict record. I'm not trying to sit here and predict who's going to be the 1 seed versus the 8 seed or anything like that. I might mention some of those things where I think a team has a specific ceiling or floor, but I'm not really trying to predict that I think, the Sixers are going to be the third seed, the Knicks are going to be 2, and then boom, all of a sudden the Indiana Pacers are going to be the 1 seed. That's not what this video is about. If y'all would like to see a video where I'm doing a standings prediction or something like that, let me know. This, however, is simply me looking at the talent on each roster and how well I think that roster will fit together on the court, and then just comparing it to other rosters around the league. All that being said, the Sacramento Kings are my number 30 team in the NBA. Now, this is assuming they lose DeMar DeRozan. They have a starting lineup that's going to be, less than ideal. They're going to have like Darius Acuff starting. We'll see what they do with like Malik Monk. They're going to have Zach LaVine obviously starting. They're going to have a Keegan Murray. They're going to have a Domantas Sabonis. It's just not going to be the best starting lineup in the league. And it doesn't sound terrible on paper, but with Zach LaVine's contract, I don't think it's crazy that they buy him out. And I don't think it's crazy that a team in the NBA could want a guy like Domantas Sabonis, even though the Kings probably aren't going to get much back for him. I think they could very well lose both of those guys by the trade deadline, and that would just make this team an even worse lineup and an even worse team. I think this will probably be the worst defense in the NBA because, listen to the lineup I just said and tell me tell me how many defensive stoppers or even competent defenders there were on it. Not very many. Kings fans, basically, you can just get excited to see what type of progression, what type of flashes you get from a guy like a Darius Acuff or from a guy like a Nick Clifford, but really there's just not much to look forward to if you're a Kings fan this year. And maybe you are excited to see what you guys can get back in some trades if you do trade some people, but yeah, it's just not looking great. Next up at number 29 is the Memphis Grizzlies, and I do want to say there are some names on the Grizzlies that I like, right? I think early in the season this will be one of my favorite league pass teams because you have guys like Cam Boozer, you have guys like Cedric Howard. Zach Edey is a guy who I hated on in college because of the way he put down my Penn State Nittany Lions in the tournament, but I'm very interested to see how he looks in this season with hopefully a fully healthy season, how he's going to be able to look with this young roster in Memphis. Will he be able to be a guy that is going to be a young center of the future, or will this kind of be a season where it's like, we're still not sure what we have there? So I'm interested to see that. But what I will say is that I'm pretty confident in the Grizzlies being one of the worst teams in the league. I've seen people talk about the Grizzlies kind of being a dark horse team or a team that has an outside shot at being a play-in team, but I just don't really buy this. I think this will be a fun team. I think this will be a team where it has young, interesting players, and young players show a lot of flashes, but I do not think this will be a team that gets above maybe the 12th spot in the final standings. I hated the Ja Morant trade. Absolutely, I hated that. I feel like the Grizzlies really traded out their core, and the best player in that core, all they could get back for him was Jeremy Grant, which was just crazy to me. I don't think the Grizzlies are going to get a lot out of Jeremy Grant. But like I said, there are a lot of young names. There are a lot of people on this team that have potential. There are guys that you look towards to be like, can you be a real rotational player for us in the future? Can you be a real part of this rebuild that we are now officially entering? So I think for Grizzlies fans, there's a lot to look forward to in this year, as we're in kind of a transitional year from you being a team that still has 2 members of your big 3 in Jaren Jackson and Ja Morant, to a team where it's like, okay, boom, now we're fully in rebuild mode. So I would like to see what that looks like for the Grizzlies this year. Number 28, we have the Milwaukee Bucks, and I think this is a pretty obvious one. They obviously became one of the worst teams in the NBA after trading away their franchise GOAT in Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I don't necessarily think this is the worst roster in the world. I didn't love the Giannis trade, and the biggest reason I didn't love the Giannis trade is, you got a good player in Tyler Hero, and you got some young pieces who could end up staying on this team, who could end up being pieces of this rebuild. But you're trading away your franchise GOAT, and you didn't get any crazy picks, and then you also didn't get a guy that's solidified going to be in our core, a guy that we are solidified going to say, hey, maybe not build around him, but we know for a fact while we are building this team, he's going to be a piece that is going to be a cornerstone. You didn't get one of those. I could see Tyler Hero being a guy that gets traded as early as this season. So I don't love the trade for that reason. I don't think this team is a phenomenal roster, but I do think it's better than the last 2 rosters that we mentioned because, like I said, Tyler Hero, good player. Ryan Rollins, he did just have a great season. I think Jaime Jaquez and Khalil Ware are solid players that have potential, and I did love what Braden Berry showed us in the Summer League, and I think a lot of that can probably translate with just that type of the way with just kind of the way he plays and his play style. I do think some of that can translate from Summer League to the NBA, at least by the end of the season with whatever minutes he's getting. I think he will be like kind of their 6th man, 7th man, 8th man type of guy. However, though, Miles Turner, coming off his worst season in the NBA, and I do not think that was really a fluke. I don't think that was him adjusting to Milwaukee or anything like that. I think that was a sign of things to come. He is a guy that's on the wrong side of 30. I just don't think that he's going to get much better than what he was last season. Kuzma just isn't good at all, whether it be basketball or Twitter. He's just not good. Gary Trent Jr. is coming off of his worst season in the NBA, and you paid him a contract that was so bad that the NBA literally investigated it. I could very well see this being the worst team in the league. Like, if Hero gets traded or an injury happens to any one of like a Kuzma, a Gary Trent, a Miles Turner or something like that, like an injury happens to one of these guys that they're really relying on, a Ryan Rollins or something, that would just hurt this team even more. And like I said, I do really think that Tyler Hero is a guy that could get traded this season. And should that happen, I would assume this would be the worst roster in the league after that, because it's just not, there's just not a lot there. And it's like, honestly, I think a big reason that I have this team at 28, but I genuinely believe they could be the worst team in the league, isn't just because of the Kuzma, or isn't just because I think they could trade Tyler Hero. It's also just because look at the team, bro. Like, sure, Ryan Rollins is a good player, but he had one good year. Are we sure? Gary Trent Jr. is a veteran coming off the worst season of his career. Same thing with Miles Turner. Same thing with Kyle Kuzma. And I feel like we probably know what the ceiling of a Tyler Hero is at this point, where he just is a fringe all-star. That's probably what the best he's ever going to be. This team doesn't really fit well to me on paper. I don't see a lot of defense on this team. I don't see rim protection on this team. I don't see a ton of playmaking on this team. I don't see a ton of leadership on this team. Taylor Jenkins is just going to have his hands full with this team. Number 27, I have the Chicago Bulls. Similarly to Memphis, I think the Bulls will be a little bit of a fun team to watch, right? When you have a starting lineup of Josh Giddey, Norm Powell, Caleb Wilson, Manas Buzelis, and Nick Claxton, that really doesn't sound terrible to me at all. But I don't really think it's better than any of these teams out east that I have ahead of him, unless Caleb Wilson is going to be a rookie of the year type of guy looking as good as he looked in Summer League, which I'm just not. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that I'm not sure about that, but it's going to be tough for him to follow up the 35-point outing in his first game of Summer League with, you know what I mean, just coming out there and outright winning Rookie of the Year when you're in a class with a guy like AJ DeMonta who has a roster around him that's set up to succeed. Or a guy like Darius Acuff that, especially if Zach LaVine and Sabonis get traded, will be taking all the shots in Sacramento. So, yeah, I think this team is solid. And I don't necessarily think this is a team that, like, if you're a Bulls fan, I don't necessarily think this is the year where you're like, ooh, I'm super excited for this year. I think you're just super excited for the rebuild to be officially started and for you to have some new, exciting young players in the building. But my biggest worry with this team is just the bench. And I think the bench is one of those reasons why this team could also be the worst team in the league, right? The only name that you really have on that bench that you even care about, you have like Trey Jones, and then you have Dalen Swain, who you hope is better throughout this season than he was in the Summer League. But I mean, he was really, 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 really bad in the Summer League. So you just pray that he's going to be a guy that's actually able to play for you this season. But I mean, if you're a Bulls fan, you should definitely be looking forward to watching a Manas Buzelis and a Caleb Wilson. That could be a fun duo for the future in Chicago. But I just really do hate that as soon as the Bulls decided to, hey, you know what? We are finally going to go ahead. We're finally going to start our rebuild. And even though it might be 5 years later, well, not really 5, but it might be 2 or 3 years late, we're just going to start it. And then as soon as they do, the lottery odds change, and now it seems like they're kind of getting punished for it. It just kind of sucks. The Bulls at 27 to me, while you could say their roster on paper might be the worst in the Eastern Conference as we sit here today, I don't think this will be the worst team in the Eastern Conference, and really, I do like the potential on this team. Whereas, like I said, with a team like Milwaukee, a lot of their players outside of maybe 2 or 3 guys, we kind of feel like we know what they're going to give us this season, and if they give us anything else than what we think they're going to give us, it's probably not going to be in a good way. It's probably going to be even worse than we expected. Anyway, Brooklyn Nets. They're my number 26 team. I think they got better this offseason, but really, it's just like they raised their floor. I don't think they raised their floor and their ceiling a little bit, but I don't think it really changed anything too crazy. Honestly, you could argue they didn't even raise their floor that much when it comes to seeding, but just instead with like the win total maybe. Julius Randle, their second best player. I don't mind that. I like what Michael Brown Jr. has showed us in the Summer League and everything like that, and I think he will be a good player for this team. MPJ is still a good basketball player, but really, I mean, there just isn't a ton on this roster outside of those guys. We'll see what Yegor Diemen can be, or Diemen. I don't know how to say his name. I'm so sorry. We'll see what Yegor Diemen can be. But I don't really think he's as good as a lot of people think. I think a lot of people are a fan of him and believe in him and think he can really be something special in this league, and I don't really believe that. I think at the very, very best, he'll be a role player in this league. I don't think he's that good, and I don't know. I haven't loved what I've seen from him, but I mean, I could be proven wrong, and that could very much raise the ceiling of this team if I am proven wrong. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is a team that is looking like the worst team in the Eastern Conference by the deadline, and they're like, hey, we might as well get what we can for a guy like an MPJ, or get what we can for a guy like a Julius Randle while these guys are still young, while these guys still have time on their contract, and while they still have trade value. If we're going to be the worst team in the East anyway, might as well just go ahead and trade them. But the reason that I don't think that's going to, another reason why I can see that not happening, what I should say, is because there's no incentive to do that. They don't have their own first round pick this year. So if they're going to be, I see why they took the swing for Julius Randle, because they get nothing for being the worst team in the league right now. I could see this being the worst team out east, but I mean, I think the MPJ and Randle duo, along with the Michael Brown and the Igor Demon, is probably better than what like maybe the Bulls have right now. It's probably better than what like probably the Bucks have right now. So it's not the worst in the NBA, but it's not great. Yeah, it's not great. A far cry from the Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving trio that you had just a couple years ago that everyone thought was going to win a finals, at least one. Anyways, number 25, we have the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Pelicans are basically just the exact same roster as last season, so we pretty much know what the ceiling and floor of these guys is going to be. The only difference is that they're really just a year older and they have a new coach. But knowing that, we know that this team, this is a roster full of injury-prone guys, so I think that does drop the floor of this team a lot. And even when this roster is fully healthy, we think of this team as the ceiling is probably being, what, the 11 or the 12 seed? Because, I mean, last year they were, I think they might have finished as the 12th seed or the 11th seed, but they had 26 wins, so that's just not phenomenal or anything like that. It's just not great. Zion's good, but the injuries are always a worry with him. The injuries are always a worry with DeJounte Murray, who's proven to be a good player in this league. You have a guy like Derek Queen who's unproven, and you really don't know, is he even going to be a guy that can play full-time center with you, especially with the defensive worries there. And, I mean, you really don't have a great center rotation behind him either, so it's like if Derek Queen can't be a full-time center for you, and you're going to have to kind of deal with him and Zion being your rotation at the four-man, which you don't really love. It's just not great, man. When I look at this roster, I just don't understand what the thought process was behind coming back and doing this roster and saying, hey, let's just go ahead and run it back, because Zion and Derek Queen together weren't very good on the court. So what are you going to do? Are you going to risk the progression of a Derek Queen just so you can start Zion and Yves Messi together? Or are you going to say, hey, maybe we think Jamal Mosley can get these guys to be better on the court than Willie Green could, or than whoever the interim was? Maybe that's what they're saying, but I don't love what they have going on here. I could very well see the Pelicans being like a 13, 14, 15 seed as we approach the trade deadline, and then they finally sit there and Joe Dumars, out of fear of losing his job after just 2 years, sits there and says, okay, boom, let's go ahead, let's trade away Trey Murphy, let's trade away Hope Jones, let's trade away Zion Williamson, let's trade away these guys while they are still young, while they still have some trade value, and before these guys get yet another injury that brings their value down even further than what it could have been. And this Pelicans team reminds me in a lesser way of the Bulls teams that we've been seeing for the last couple of years, where it's like, okay, boom, we see the ceiling of this team, and yet y'all continue to keep running it back because you just think this one draft pick you got's going to change it, or this one or you just are finally going to get a healthy season, or guys are finally going to progress, or you finally have the coach. It's just not true. We have seen what the ceiling of this team is throughout different iterations. We've seen what the ceiling of a core that has a Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and whatever other complementary pieces you want to see. We've seen the core over and over again. I just genuinely do not understand what the Pelicans are doing by just continuing to come back into it year and year again and saying, hey, we can change one or two things on the outside and be good. This core is good. Trust me. It's just not true. Number 24, sorry, I just have frustrations with how the Pelicans are being handled. And as a guy that loves Zion, as a guy that was a fan of DeJounte Murray, as a guy that loved Derek Queen coming out of college, not loved, but liked Derek Queen coming out of college, as a guy that liked Jeremiah Fears coming out of college, it's frustrating to me, because I liked Willie Green as a coach too. Like, it's just frustrating to me to see the Pelicans kind of, no matter what they do, it just seems like that's where careers go to die. So I just hate it. Number 24, we have the LA Clippers. This is assuming the Kawhi trade goes through, which I think is being it looks more and more murky by the day. Like, they're talking about this thing, the investigation could push into 2027, everything like that, which is just absolutely crazy. But assuming that trade does go through, it makes the Clippers much, much worse because Brandon Ingram is simply a far worse player than Kawhi Leonard is right now. And I don't think Grady Dick is going to be a guy that is going to continue to develop. I don't think he's going to develop into this super shooter that you want him to be or into this crazy tier of player that you want him to be. I don't think he's going to be much better than what he currently is. Taking the fly on him isn't anything too bad because, I mean, you know, he's not terrible, and Brandon Ingram is a solid floor raiser, so it's not the worst trade. It's not the worst guy to take a flyer on, but yeah, I just don't love it. Brook Lopez as a center was bad last year, and he's just another year older, so... And then behind him, really all you got is Yannick Cole and Niederhauser, and you don't know how good he's going to be, but I am interested to see, like, do they just start him at a certain point in the season if they're a certain level of bad? Just to kind of say, hey, what does this young guy have for us? Can he be something that can be our starting center? Do we have our starting center of the future? There's no point of them sacrificing his minutes for Brook Lopez minutes when they're not going to be competing for anything. Last but not least on this team, I just think the defense is not going to be good. But I do like the depth, right? Like I don't hate the Rui Hachimura pickup. They still have guys like Chris Dunn. I don't hate you having Benedict Mathurin, assuming I think he's a free agent right now, so assuming you can bring him back. It's not the worst depth. It's not the worst roster in the league, but I just think the floor and the ceiling aren't that far apart from each other, right? Where it's like the floor might not be the lowest floor in the league, but the ceiling isn't going to get any higher than like the 10-11 seed to me. I just don't think this is a team that's going to be very good, and honestly, I don't even really see them making the play yet. I just don't think this is going to be a good team. Number 23, and I think here for the next couple of picks, we might have things that'll be a little bit of... I don't necessarily want to say, hey, these are going to all be hot takes, but I think these next couple of rosters, there are going to be some teams where it's like, damn, you got them lower than some of the teams above them. And it's like, yeah, I do. And I don't necessarily, like I said, this does not mean that I necessarily think the standings will reflect this. I just think when I look at the rosters and I look at the fits and I look at the names, this team is worse than some of the other teams ahead of it. Oh, had to sneeze. Anyways, number 23, I have the Golden State Warriors, and this sucks to say, man. The Golden State Warriors have really, really fallen, and as a guy who has Steph Curry as his favorite player of all time, this just sucks. And let's just say they do end up trading Steph, which I very much do not think they will do. That would probably lead to them falling on this ranking, but I mean, Steph is really the only reason that y'all are even at 23. Like, Steph is holding this ranking up on his shoulders, like when John Cena picked up the Big Show and hit him with the attitude adjustment back in 2010. Okay, I promise you, if it was not for that young man wearing number 30, y'all would be dead last. This roster is awful. It's terrible. You could argue that because Steph Curry's still here, you could put him a little higher, but I'm so mad at what the Warriors have not even done, what the Warriors haven't done this offseason and to help Stephen Curry that I'm putting them here at 23. I don't even care. Porzingis, solid player. I don't mind you going to get him. The Jimmy Butler trade in real time, I didn't necessarily hate it, but I just don't like that you had opportunities to go get other guys, and because you weren't willing to put in a Pods or a Kuminga or a Moody or a GP2, you didn't get him, so now you were forced to go out there and not only get Jimmy Butler, but then forced to overpay for Jimmy Butler. I don't really love that. Yaxel, I think he'll be good basically immediately as an older rookie, as a guy that won Summer League MVP, as a guy that has looked like just a real NBA player. But there just really isn't much on this roster outside of an older and injury-prone Porzingis, an older rookie Yaxel Lindendorf, and Steph Curry. There just isn't much there, bro. Jimmy and Moses Moody are both expected to miss most of the season, if not the full season. They're both expected to miss like at least half the season. Draymond is yet another year older and about to be making $28 million a year. And basically every single big name that was available this offseason has already been locked up onto a team. So there's just really not much hope for the Warriors to even have anything else on their roster unless you are telling me they're going to trade Steph Curry, in which case, sure, the roster would look different, but it would look worse because you're going to go down to probably 28th, 30th on this list if you were to trade away a guy like Steph Curry. It's just fully insane to me, the fact that the Warriors have the greatest point guard of all time on their team and they continuously say, yeah, fuck them. We'd rather build around Pods. Never scored 30, by the way. Anyways, the Atlanta Hawks, and they are my number 22 team, and I think this is probably my hottest take of the video, where I'm sure y'all saw that Bleacher Report article that came out ranking the starting fives, and I think they had the Hawks at like 8. I've been seeing a lot of basketball YouTubers, basketball podcasters and stuff talk about how they like the Hawks as a team that could be a play-in or even playoff team. And I am just much lower on this team than consensus seems to be, dude. I know they gave the defending champion Knicks a better series in the playoffs than anybody else did. I am fully aware of that. But when I look at this roster, I have a tough time understanding what people are seeing that I'm not seeing. Maybe it's because they proved something last year that a lot of the rosters ahead of them haven't proven, right? You'll notice I haven't said a team like the Washington Wizards yet. They proved more last year than the Wizards have since John Wall was there, right? So please don't get me wrong. If you want to say just based off of what the Hawks did last year, they should just be ahead of a team like the Wizards right now, I'm not mad at you, but that's not what this is. This is based off of looking at the rosters on paper and how well I think they will fit together. And there's no way that I look at this Hawks roster and I realistically think it's going to be better than some of these other ones out east. I just don't see it, barring injuries for some of these teams. I know Jalen Johnson is good. I believe that Jalen Johnson is good. I know that CJ McCollum is good. I believe that Nickeil Alexander-Walker's season last year, the phenomenal season that he's coming off of, was real. I do not believe that was fake. I do not believe he's going to be a guy that's going to regress to 12 or 13 points a game. I do not believe that. But I am also not of the belief that this is a team that's going to be a 6 seed, and I don't even think this is a solidified playoff team with the way the East looks right now. Because, okay, boom, let's talk about the roster. Let's talk about the starting lineup. Let's spend some time here with the Hawks, and let me tell you why I have this as such a hot take. CJ McCollum, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, and Onyeka Okongwu. Off the bench, you're going to have, like, Kingston Flemings. You're going to have, like, Lou Dort. You're going to have, I feel like they have, like, a shooter that I'm missing or something. But you're going to have Mo Gay, and you might have, who's your other backup center? Is it Porty? You ought to get Porty. Who is it? Jacques Landale. That roster, that lineup isn't terrible. It's not. But then I go and I look at the Pacers. Boom. Halliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, Zubac. Better. I go and I look at the Celtics. Tatum, White, Pritchard, Hugo Gonzalez, Neemias, or Mitchell not Hugo Gonzalez. Paul George, Neemias Queta, or Mitchell Robinson. Better. You go to any of these teams out east, and I look at the starting lineups, and for most of them, I look at the depth, and I see these teams being better than the Atlanta Hawks. When I go to the Wizards, and I talk about Trae Young, and I talk about Keyshawn George, and AJ DeMonsa, and Alex Sarr, whoever else is going to start over there, I look at that team, and Anthony Davis, and I look at that team, and I say, yeah, that team is better, at least on paper, than this Atlanta Hawks team. So I could see the Atlanta Hawks proving me wrong, and I could see that team being better on the court than they are on paper. But when I'm looking at that team on paper, there's no way that I can put them anywhere higher than this. I'm sorry, I just can't. Now, Atlanta Hawks fans, yell at me in the comments and try to convince me, and this take could very well age like milk. So, whatever. Anyways, number 21, I have the Utah Jazz. Another one that could be a little bit of a hot take, especially for Utah fans, because you did so much to trade and get up a Jaren Jackson Jr., because you did so much to with drafting a Darren Peterson. And I think this is a team that's gotten a lot better in the last 6 months or so, basically since the trade deadline. But I do think they kind of blundered that all the way with the Walker Kessler trade. Because before that trade, I was loving the idea of having a Keontae George, Darren Peterson, Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Walker Kessler starting lineup with Ace Bailey and all these other guys like Isaiah Collier and whoever else off the bench, right? But now I look at this team, man, and don't get me wrong. Even with that lineup, the backup center rotation wasn't going to be great. But now I look at this team, and I say your center rotation is going to be Jackson Hayes and Yusuf Nurkic, as opposed to having Walker Kessler. Not only is the defense much worse, but just the level of play in general is much worse with those guys. Sure, Jackson Hayes can catch a lob, and Yusuf Nurkic isn't the worst basketball player in the world. I'm not trying to say that they are. But those two guys combined aren't as good as Walker Kessler is. You could combine those two guys, and the defense would still be leagues below what Walker Kessler is going to give you. I just don't understand when you have a big body, tall, rim protecting, good defending, lob catching center that's young and fits the core that you have, why you say, okay, boom, we did all this to trade for a lineup that essentially fits around Walker Kessler perfectly. Other than maybe not having the best playmaking point guard, you built a lineup that fits around the guy perfectly, and then you say, okay, boom, we love our roster, now we're going to trade it and make it just a little bit worse so we can get some first-round picks from the Lakers who have Luka Doncic, so those picks might not even mean anything. I just don't really get the thought process behind that. I worry a lot about the defense of this unit, and I think its center rotation is probably the worst in the league. Like I said, the Jazz got better, and I think their ceiling or floor are both much higher than they were at this time last season. But the Walker Kessler trade did take them from a team that I was like, ooh, could be a top 6 seed, to a team that I'm like, ooh, they could very well miss the play-in entirely, and then they just traded 3 first-round picks for Jaren Jackson Jr. to do nothing. Because when I look at the defense on this roster, who's a defender that's not named Jaren Jackson Jr.? I don't see one. Number 20, the Charlotte Hornets. This is another team that dropped for me when I was like that has dropped for me since the trades they made in the offseason. I was loving the direction that the Charlotte Hornets were going in last season. I loved the lineup that they had. I loved the young draft picks they made last season, and I was loving this youth movement, this fun, exciting team that the Charlotte Hornets had. And now, I mean, it's not bad, right? Their current lineup is going to be Kobe White and Naz Reid starting to replace Melo and Miles Bridges. So it'll be Kobe White, Brandon Miller, Con Knipple, Naz Reid, and then, damn, why am I forgetting my boy's name? Either Hans Steinbach or, damn, he was so good. Oh, is it Diawara? No, that's not. That can't be. But who am I thinking of? Well, you know who he is. Dang, this is bothering me because he's a good center, and he played good for them last year. And he was like a piece of their core. Like, when he was playing, they were like undefeated for a little bit. Like, when he was playing, they were very, very good. And I cannot think of this man's name right now. But then plus the center, the starting lineup's just not bad. And I could still very well see this starting lineup leading, not the starting lineup, but this roster leading to a play-in berth. Please don't get me wrong. But I think the ceiling of this roster is far, far, far lower than it was when you have a LaMelo Ball. And that's not just because LaMelo is way better than Kobe White, but it's also because you like to see a playmaker like LaMelo Ball leading this team, at least leading the starting lineup, and then a scorer, a guy that can be a spark plug off the bench like Kobe White coming off the bench. Whereas now, your bench isn't bad, right? You have a Sion James, you have a Kalkbrenner, you have a Liam McNeely. You have guys coming off your bench that are solid basketball players. Please do not get me wrong, especially if they do progress the way you think they could because these guys are so young. Please don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I just think the ceiling of this team is way lower. I don't love the LaMelo trade. I'm going to be real. I just don't like it that much. I don't think the Hornets downgraded terribly from last season, but I just feel like they had such a promising season. And after such a promising season, I would have really liked to have seen them give that core another year, right? Just to see, could this be a team that with this core, with another year of draft picks, could be a team that goes from, hey, we're maybe a play-in team to a team that's like, no. You have to worry about us as being a real top 6 seed that could even maybe win a first-round playoff series. And now it's like, damn, you put a lot more pressure on second-year player Con Knipple's shoulder. You put a lot more pressure on third-year player Brandon Miller's shoulders. And I just don't love that. I'm going to be real. I just don't. Number 19, we have the Phoenix Suns. And I don't really hate the way Phoenix has moved since kind of moving on from the Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal trio or anything like that. I don't really hate the starting line that they have right now of a Devin Booker, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Miles Bridges, and Mark Williams. But I do think this team was better and had more depth before the Miles Bridges trade. I didn't really understand why you would trade Miles Bridges why you would trade for Miles Bridges when trading away a pick and you traded away 2 solid role players. I would have much rather you just kept those 2 solid role players because I don't think Miles Bridges is a guy that offers that much for you. I don't think he's a guy that at the 4 is going to be so good or so needed that you're just really going to take a step up. I think this Phoenix Suns team will be probably a similar team to last year, right? It could be a play-in team. There are guys in this team with potential, right? Like I do love Kaman Mayuach. I like what Koa Pete showed us, and I've liked the flashes that Ryan Dunn has shown us. But I do worry about the fit of Jalen Green and Devin Booker in the backcourt still because I just don't know how well that fit's going to be when you don't have a true playmaker there. These are 2 guys who are traditionally shooting guards. These are 2 guys who traditionally want to score the ball. And I just don't think this team has the talent of some of the other teams ahead of it out west. I just don't necessarily think that I don't think a lot changed for the Suns this offseason, right? Like, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The best thing for the Suns to do this offseason was just to probably improve along the margins and do the best they could do and see some progression. I think that's what they saw. Like I said, I don't love the one trade that they did make for Miles Bridges, but other than that, I don't hate their offseason, and I think this will be a team that'll probably have a very, that'll have a solid floor and a solid ceiling. Like, this will be a team that, I think we all pretty much know where they're going to be. They'll be probably at the highest an 8 seed, and at the lowest, they'll probably be like an 11 seed, right? The Suns will be a solid team. Suns fans, at least you still have Devin Booker. At number 18, we have the Dallas Mavericks. And I am genuinely so interested to see how this season goes for Dallas. My prediction for it personally is that this team will be a play-in contender that'll be based off the backs mostly of Cooper Flagg, Kyrie Irving, and then a solid defense behind those guys. But I could also see a world where the Mavs kind of aren't looking as good as you might want them to look, aren't really fighting for a play-in spot, or Kyrie just doesn't look as good as you want him to look off that injury, or a team is really coming to call for Kyrie, and the Mavs do trade Kyrie Irving for something that fits a little bit more within the Cooper Flagg timeline, while you still have value for Kyrie Irving, while you still don't have to worry about trying to give him a crazy extension or anything like that. Just go ahead and trade him while you can. But regardless, whether you trade Kyrie Irving or keep him, I am excited for year 2 Cooper Flag because I do, at least for the beginning of the season, want to see him alongside a healthy Kyrie Irving. I like the pieces of Najee Marshall, Derek Lively, PJ Washington, Max Crispy, Daniel Gafford, Zachary Reese, even Klay Thompson, assuming they keep him, as like role players, as good depth on this team. I think this team has a lot of depth, and I think because of that, this is my dark horse team, or my dark horse pick to make the playoffs out west. I think this is a team that, if they go into the play-in healthy, nobody will want to see him. I think Cooper Flag could be in for a massive progression where he comes out of this season. And you're looking at Cooper Flag as like a top 20, top 15 player in basketball, and I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility at all. And like I said, really, if they just have a healthy season with these role players and a healthy Cooper Flag and a healthy Kyrie Irving, I think this is the team that could really make the playoffs. I think they have a higher ceiling than either the Suns or the Jazz. And I think this team, again, if healthy, could beat some of the higher end teams out west that seem like the Suns or the Jazz. Just I think will have a little bit of a lower chance against, just because they don't have the star power that'll be able to really step up in those games. Where I could see a Cooper Flag or Kyrie Irving stepping up in a game against a Shea, in a game against a Kevin Durant, in a game against a Jokic. I could see that happening for at least a game. So yeah, that's where I got the Dallas Mavericks at. Number 17, the Washington Wizards. And listen, man, never in my life have I been able to put the Washington Wizards this high on a tier list, and I am really, or not a tier list, but a rankings video, and I'm really excited to watch this team. As y'all know, I love that the Wizards are almost in the top half of this list after being closer to number 30 than they were to number 15 for the last 4 or 5 years. I'm a fan of the youth on this team. I like Alex Sarr, I like AJ DeBonsa, I like Keyshawn George, and I like Trey Johnson. Basically, the whole roster is young outside of Trae Young and Anthony Davis, and I think they brought back... Did they bring back Chris Middleton? Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe somebody else brought back Chris Middleton, but somebody has Chris Middleton. They have Trae Young and Anthony Davis as veterans, as floor raisers, as the guys who are going to come in and are going to sell tickets. Even though you have AJ DeBonsa now, so you know he's going to sell tickets. But really, when you trade it for those guys, those are the names. It's going to be like, boom, we're at least going to be able to sell tickets next season. I think this will be a team where a lot of players, nobody on this team I think is going to have an MVP season or have a 30-point per game season or anything like that. But I think a lot of players on this team will just have good seasons. I could see this being a lower scoring year for Trae Young, but a year where he has more assists. I can see a guy like an AJ DeBonsa being a guy that this team uses as a bit of a scoring hub a little bit because of his ability to get to the free throw line. I can see Anthony Davis being a guy that doesn't have to do that much on offense this year, so maybe him and Alex Sarr alongside an AJ DeBonsa create a phenomenal defensive front court because of the size and the length and everything like that. And like I said, if Anthony Davis has to do less offensively, it might help him, especially at his older age, be able to focus a little bit more on the defensive side and everything like that. And I think especially because he'll be able to play the 4, which is what he's been wanting to play, assuming they keep him and assuming that everything goes well there. I could see this being a very good AD year, especially defensively. I am a big fan of what the Wizards are doing, and I just love the ceiling of this team, man. And I know I've been talking a lot about the ceiling of this team, and I haven't talked a lot about the floor. The what if Trae Young play style isn't going to change. The what if Anthony Davis does get injured. The what if these young players don't progress the way you want them to. The what if AJ DeBonsa isn't a rookie of the year caliber rookie as a rookie. That stuff could all happen. But I don't want to think about that because we talked about the negative with the Wizards for so many years now. I'm excited to look forward to them and possibly seeing them in the postseason, to be real. Number 16, right above the Washington Wizards, I have the Orlando Magic. And this is tough for me because I really, really want so badly to believe in the Orlando Magic because I believe in Paolo and I believe in Jace Richardson, and I think Franz Wagner is at the very least a good player. But I just don't think this roster is great. Paolo, Franz, and Bane, don't get me wrong, that's a lot more than other teams have, right? That trio is probably better than, at least without seeing AJ DeBonsa play, it might be better than the trio that the Wizards have. It's probably better than the trio that, I don't know, the Utah Jazz have, or the Dallas Mavericks, or whoever these teams are below them that I put. And that's why they are up here. But that trio, even while it might be more than some of what these other teams have above them, it's just not enough, I don't think, because Paolo and Franz are both guys with injury concerns. Anthony Black is a guy that had a good year, but he still cannot shoot, and you don't know if he'll be able to be a guy that can ever get to above 35% or above 35% as a three-point shooter. And you don't know if he's going to be able to replicate the year he had last year. There isn't a ton of depth on any spot on this lineup, and your center rotation is mid at best. And that's probably the spot where you have the most depth, but it's just a mid rotation between Wendell Carter, Goga Bitadze, and Nikola Vucevic. That being the spot where you have the most depth, but that also being the spot where you just kind of have like the worst names just isn't great to me, especially with the guys like Embiid out east, Zubac out east now. You're going to have to deal with a Cat out east still. It's just not going to be super easy for, you know what I mean, the Magic, who are a team that's still offensively. Do we think they're still going to be offensively struggle to an extent? Probably, right? Like, this probably still isn't going to be a team with the best offense ever because they still don't have 10 or 15. They still don't have a bunch of shooters out there. They still don't have guys where it's like, boom, give the ball to Paolo, and he's got two guys that can catch and shoot at any time from any spot on the floor and make it. He just doesn't have those guys. They just don't have those guys, and I just think that's the problem with this team. Is like, yeah, we know the floor is going to be high because you have a Paolo, Franz, and Desmond Bane, but what's that ceiling going to be? I just don't think they've been raising it enough. 15, I have the Portland Trailblazers, and I think Portland probably had like the weirdest offseason of any team. They for sure made the weirdest trade of the offseason with the Ja Morant trade. And because of that, to me, they just have one of the weirdest rosters in the NBA. They have about 20 million guards between Ja, Dame, Drew Holiday, Scoot Henderson, and Shaedon Sharpe. But then you look at the forward depth, and they just have none. And when you look at the centers, they're relying solely on centers that are either super young or super injury prone between Donovan Clingan and a Jan Hansen, who are both super young players still. And Jan Hansen really hasn't even played in the NBA yet. And then Robert Williams, who's been a good center and has had good years, especially defensively, but has also been a very injury-prone guy throughout his career. And to the Ja Morant trade, dude, listen. Based on talent, I don't hate the Ja Morant trade. You get rid of Jeremy Grant and you get in Ja Morant. That's a no-brainer to me. But now, the team, sure, it might look better on paper because you do have the Ja Morant talent instead of the Jeremy Grant talent, but it just doesn't. I don't think this team fits together at all. You are expecting guys like Donovan Clingan and Toumani Camara to be basically the only defense you have on the roster. You're hoping that Deni Avdija, Ja Morant, and Damian Lillard can find a way to all share the one basketball without them all freaking out, because, I mean, that's the thing, too, is like, yeah, you have the talent, but if all of those guys who have talent to score need the ball, what are you really going to do? How is the paint going to look when you have Deni Avdija trying to drive, Ja Morant trying to drive, Toumani Camara sitting, or Donovan Clingan sitting at the dunker spot? What is that paint going to look like? I just don't love it. I don't think this will be a bad team, but I don't think this will be a good team, and I don't think this will be a team that looks the same by the trade deadline. I think at least two of these guards are gone come the end of the trade deadline. Number 14, I have the Indiana Pacers, and I think with these next 4 or 5 teams, you could really put them all right next to each other, and I did put them all right next to each other because I think it was extremely difficult for me to kind of differentiate between all these teams, because they do all have their flaws. They're all a little bit similar, but they all have their flaws, and I think the Eastern Conference is going to be one of those where it's like similar to what the West has been in recent years, where it's like, okay, boom, it's one game separating the 8 seed and the 3 seed. That's kind of what I could see the Eastern Conference being this year. It was similar to what I said the West has been in the last couple of years, right? Where it's like, boom, we have the Warriors who are the 9 or 10 seed and they have 48 wins, right? And you know why that happens? Because the conferences are so deep. I think that could happen in the Eastern Conference this year, and I think that's why with these next 4 or 5 teams, you kind of see them all clustered up against each other, because I can't really figure out who's better than who, to be honest with you, because I could see a world where any one of these teams ends up being the best of the bunch. So it's just tough. Some of you are going to hate on me. You're going to say the Pacers are a little too low, given the fact that the last time we saw this team fully healthy, they took the Oklahoma City Thunder to Game 7 in the NBA Finals. And you very well could be right. But since they added Zubac and Halliburton, I just think there's a lot of questions, right? You've not added Halliburton, but you add Zubac, and that is a lot of questions there, because it's like, okay, Zubac is a guy that's a big body screener. He's going to sit in the paint for a lot of the time. He's not going to stretch the floor. He's going to be a better defender than Miles Turner, but he's not going to help you as much offensively as Miles Turner when it comes to sitting in the corner. The difference, though, is he's going to set better screens than Miles Turner. He's going to be probably a better roll man than Miles Turner. He probably will be a more consistent finisher at the rim than Miles Turner, maybe. But the real thing to me is Halliburton, because Halliburton is their best and their most important player. He's the guy that really runs the engine of this team in every way, shape, and form offensively, and he's dealt with some major health issues since the last time we saw him. So now you have to worry about how Zubac is going to look alongside a fully healthy Pacers unit. Will he ever be able to be the Zubac that he was with the Clippers 2 years ago? Will he be that all-NBA, all-defensive level Zubac? And then we also have to see how good Tyrese Halliburton is going to look coming off the injury and coming off the shingles and everything like that. So with all that being said, I wouldn't at all be surprised if this team figures things out and gets back to looking like that team that won the Eastern Conference and almost won the NBA Finals a couple years ago. And finishes as a top 6 teed out East and a team that nobody wants to see come playoff time. But at the same time, after such a bad season last year and with so many questions surrounding 2 of the major players in the top 5, in the starting 5, I just can't really put them any higher than this, because also the depth of this team isn't great, right? The backup center is going to be what, like Isaiah Jackson. You don't love that. You still have a TJ McConnell who's older, but it's just like I feel like you don't have the best forward depth. You don't have the best wing depth or anything like that. And I mean, Tyrese Halliburton's not the only guy that was injured last year, right? Andrew Nembhard got hurt last year, missed significant time. Pascal Siakam's another year older, and while I do trust Pascal Siakam, I'm not really worried about him. There are real questions about this Pacers team, and I don't think we can just go into the season assuming that because they have Zubac now and they have a healthy Halliburton now, they'll just be back to the Pacers that won the Eastern Conference. I don't think we can just go ahead and assume that. Anyways, at number 13, we have the Boston Celtics, and Boston was a very difficult team for me to place, mostly because of we just saw Jaylen Brown lead this team to 56 wins, and arguably he did that with maybe a worse supporting cast than what Tatum is going to have because he didn't have a Paul George or Mitchell Robinson doing so. And because of that, I do feel like Tatum can lead this team to a similar year. I do think Tatum can lead this team to somewhere around 50 wins. The problem with that, though, and the reason this team is so much lower than you might think they would be, even considering the fact that I have them getting about 50 wins, is because I think the East is deeper. So a 56-win season, I don't think is going to get you to a top 3 seed like it did last year, because I could very well see a couple of teams out East having 58-plus wins because there's that many good teams. There's just that many guys. There's that many teams that have talent in the Eastern Conference right now. So I could very well see teams beating up on each other a little bit more in the East last year, right? Because you didn't have a healthy Pacers, and the Bucks were nothing because they didn't have Giannis, and the Heat weren't as threatening as they were, and the Sixers weren't as threatening as they were, and the Raptors weren't as threatening as they were. Like, all these teams out East, for the most part, got better. So while I could see the Celtics having a very similar year, I don't think it will lead to them being as high of a seed or anything like that as they were this year. I like the addition of Mitchell Robinson. I think Paul George, as terrible as that trade was, I do think he fits this team. And I do think there is a genuine belief and a genuine reason to believe that guys like Baylor Shireman and Hugo Gonzalez can progress here and can really, really help this team out and be real rotational players for this team as they were last year. But I do worry that down year from Derek White that we saw last year was a real thing, and I do genuinely believe that that's something that could be maybe a sign of more to come and not just a down year, because he is a guy that is on the wrong side of 30 and he is just only going to continue to get older. But yeah, like I said, I could see the Celtics being a 50-win team. I think the ceiling of this roster, I think the floor of this roster is very high. I do not think this is a team that's going to be missing the play-in or anything like that. But I think the ceiling of this team is way, way lower than it was before the Jaylen Brown trade, and I have them below these other teams because I think it's more realistic for me to see that these other teams coming out as a top 3 seed than it is for me to see Boston coming out as a top 3 seed. Number 12, the Detroit Pistons. Last year, Detroit was the number 1 seed, and I don't think that's going to happen for a second year in a row, but I do think the Pistons will be a very good regular season team. Cade is a dog, and he proved that he can play like an MVP and lead his team to 60-plus wins. Jalen Duren just had a very good All-NBA level regular season last year, and again, that's another thing that I don't think will continue on for the second straight year, but he is a good regular season player, and I don't think Jalen Duren is just a bad center. As much as the playoffs look terrible for him, he's not a bad center. He's going to be a good center for this team, assuming he plays here next year. He will help this team out a ton, and he will raise the floor for this team. I'm a fan of Ausar Thompson, and I think this team has far more shooting around the guys that are non-shooters like Ausar Thompson this year than they did last year. But my problem with this team, and even though they added a ton of shooting, is I don't think they added the right things, right? I like that you added more shooting, but I don't get why you feel like you need to have 8 guys that are just sharpshooters and don't do anything else between like an Isaiah Joe and all these other guys they have on the roster. A Duncan Robinson, right? Like, you don't need 3 or 4 guys who are all going to be just sharpshooters, especially when they're all at like a similar position. Especially if you're expecting Chaz Lanier or somebody like that to come in and do similar things. You don't need 12 shooters. You don't. Why not go out there and get another defender? You lost Isaiah Stewart. Go out there and go get another forward/big man defender. Go out there and get another ball creator, another shot creator, another ball handler for Cade Cunningham, because I think that is the most glaring need for this team. So yeah, I don't hate their offseason. I didn't hate the things they did, and I don't think they got like crazy worse with losing Tobias Harris, losing Tim Hardaway Jr., anything like that. I think this is a very similar roster to what they had last year in terms of ceiling and floor. I think the ceiling, though, is just a little bit lower. I do think Tobias Harris provides a little bit more shot creation, a little bit better, a little bit more aggressiveness, a little bit better shot selection than a guy like John Collins does, and I do think he's a better offensive player than John Collins is. So, yeah, I don't think the floor changed too much, but I do think the ceiling got a little bit lower on this team. But this will be a good team. And after what Cade and this team showed me last year, I do think it would be disrespectful to really have them any lower on this ranking because while they didn't get much better this offseason, they didn't get much worse either. Number 11 is a team that I had a very, 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 very tough time ranking because I had this team as low as like 15 or 16, and then I had this team as high as like 8 or 9. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers. And they're a team that's very similar to like the Indiana Pacers to me, but I think I have less questions about this team than I do with the Pacers, and that's because they made it to the conference finals last year, whereas the Pacers are a year removed from doing those types of things and have dealt with more in the last year than I think I could have ever predicted. But when I look at the Cavs, I just have less questions than I do about the Pacers. They have this four-man unit of Harden, D. Mitch, assuming they get Harden back. They have Harden, D. Mitch, Mobley, and Jared Allen, and I think that team, that four-man unit has a very, very high floor. Just forget about whoever's going to be playing the three-man over there. But, yeah, I think that team – or it'll probably be like Max Strus. So, I mean, that's not terrible. But the depth over there at like the three-man isn't great. Just the depth on the team as a whole isn't really great. I don't think this team is going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals or winning the East or anything like that. But in the regular season, I could see this team being a team that that fools people, right? Because we know James Harden is one of the best floor-raisers in ball. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Cavs finish as like a top 3, top 4 seed in the regular season, cruise to 56, 58 wins, maybe even 60 wins or something like that. And they have people thinking that this is another year where they could be a real contender, myself included, because I believe that for like every year that this team's been together. Because when you look at them on paper, there's just no way this team should be bad. But yeah, I don't think they will be bad. I think this will be a good regular season team. I'm just not going to buy the playoff Kool-Aid. I'm not going to drink the playoff Kool-Aid that I've been drinking over the last couple of years. I believe in them for the regular season. That's about it. Now we're really getting into the top teams in basketball. We're getting into the top third. We are into the top 10, and we are at the Miami Heat. This is, of all the teams in the East that made major moves in the offseason, I think they have one of the highest ranges when it comes to ceiling/floor for me, because on the one hand, they will have one of the best defenses in basketball with Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, Giannis, and Bam. But then on the other hand, I worry about how are you going to have all those guys on court at the same time without the offense being clunky and slow and just crowding the paint. I wonder where's the catch and shoot ability going to come from outside of a Tim Hardaway Jr. I wonder where is the off the dribble going to come? Where's the off the dribble shooting going to come from? Because I don't think they have a lot of guys that can really do pull up 3-point shooting on this team. Davion Mitchell is really the only guard on the whole team, and there just isn't a lot of depth really for anybody on this team. There are real injury concerns with Giannis, and even though he's a guy that's never really been injured throughout his career too much, I mean, he only played 36 games last year, and really since the year after the championship, he has not had a healthy playoff run, so I would consider those injury concerns. But, I mean, hey, if you're a Heat fan, you got Giannis, you should be over the moon about that, and you guys are like getting – if you were to get like a Clay or a Westbrook or a Bradley Beal or something like that, I think that would help. Kind of my worries about the guard position, at least a little bit, can maybe move you up a spot or two if you just were to get another guard or another couple guards on this roster that can really just handle some ball handling and that can handle some shooting responsibilities. Number 9, the LA Lakers. The Lakers are a confusing team because we've seen Luka Doncic take teams that don't have the most amount of talent, that aren't considered a super team, and we've seen him take those teams to the heights of being in the NBA Finals in the NBA. And I do still believe in Luka, that I do still believe he can do those things. I believe he's the top 4 player in the league, and I think he can carry a team when he's healthy. But this team doesn't have the depth or the defense of a team like the Dallas Mavericks did when Luka took them to the finals. And I do think this team is really just one Luka Doncic injury away from being like a bottom 5 roster out west. When healthy, I think this team will be a genuine threat to anybody out west. I think they're kind of a very similar team to Denver, where it's like you got one guy kind of carrying everything with like a borderline fringe all-star guy behind him, and then everything else after that just isn't great. But with that being said, I think the Nuggets have a better defensive infrastructure, and I think Jokic is better than Luka at this point. So that's why I have the Nuggets above the Lakers at the number 8 spot. Denver disappointed me last playoffs. I think they looked way, way worse than the Timberwolves did down the stretch of that series. I think we saw Jokic have his worst series offensively while Gobert was out there clamping him up defensively. But, I mean, we know what the Denver Nuggets are going to be, right? With all that being said, we know that barring a Nikola Jokic injury, this team will have a high floor, and Nikola Jokic has really never been super injured. So I'm not worried about this team having a low floor. I'm not worried about this team missing the playoffs or anything like that. This will be a playoff team. Jokic is great. He's going to continue to be great. And if Jamal Murray can replicate the scoring season that he had last year, this team will be a playoff team, and Jamal Murray will have all-star considerations like he did last year. But, I mean, there are real worries about this team, right? Because they're probably going to lose Peyton Watson because it doesn't look like they're going to be able to afford him. They have an aging Aaron Gordon. So the defense there is probably going to be a little bit worse than it's been in the last couple of years. So my really big worry about this team is where the defense is going to come on a night in and night out basis. Are you going to be saying, hey, Christian Brown, point of attack defender, and you're also just going to be our main defender on the team? Good luck, especially when Aaron Gordon's missing games. Good luck. Yeah, that just doesn't sound like a good recipe to success for me personally. I worry about the depth. I don't think you have a lot of guard depth. You don't have a lot of depth behind Jokic. I mean, you have Marvin Bagley, who's not bad, but you just don't have the best depth for this team in really any spot on the floor. And Cam Johnson, you hope you can get Cam Johnson to the point where he's like going from taking the 4.3 threes or whatever he was taking last year to taking 8 threes a game but keeping the efficiency the same. And I think if they could do that, at least they would have a better offensive season. You know what I mean? If they can get Cam Johnson to stay shooting that 40+% from three, but to do so while shooting 6 to 8 of them a game instead of just the 4, that would help the team out tremendously. And that would help them win some of these games where they're letting up 140 points. Number 7, I have the Houston Rockets, and this is a team that went out really, really sad in the playoffs last year, and I could see kind of the memory of them in the playoffs last year turning people off from them being this high on my list. But when we look at the roster on paper, this is a good roster. They have Kevin Durant when healthy. They have Amen. They have Freddie. They have Jabari Smith, and they have Alperen Sengun. That's just not going to be a bad starting lineup because then off the bench you have Marcus Smart, you have Reed Shepherd, you have Tari Eason, you have good depth, you have good starting lineup, you have good defense, you have solid shooting, especially with Fred VanVleet being back, and you have better playmaking and better floor generalship with Fred VanVleet being back as well. Again, not a perfect team. And the fact that they went out so sadly in last playoffs does mean something. The fact that a lot of guys like Sengun and Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith and even Tari Eason didn't progress in the way that we expected them to last season is also a worrying sign. But I mean, these guys are still really, really young. We know progression is not linear, and I would not be at all surprised if we see Reed Shepherd come into the season and have a better year. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Bruce Thornton come into the season and provide something for this team, and I wouldn't be surprised if either Abari or an Amen just got better in the offseason. Number 6, I've got the Toronto Raptors, and I know some of y'all are going to call this bias because I'm a Raptors fan, but dog, assuming Kawhi goes to Toronto, I really genuinely believe in this team. This is a team that with Kawhi could very well be the 1 seed out east to me, bro. Scotty Barnes already led this team to a 5 seed in Game 7 in the first round of the playoffs against a much better team while his supporting cast was terrible. He was missing quickly the whole series. Brandon Ingram was basically a no-show the whole series until he got hurt. He had very, very little help. He had really no help at the center position while they were going against 2 elite big men in Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. He really had no help at the center position. His only center was a rookie 6'9", 6'8" CMB. That's just not enough, bro. So when you add quickly, healthy alongside this team, when you add a Kawhi Leonard who can play at least 50 to 60 games, I hope, there's no way you tell me that this is not a super, super scary team out east. I think the only part of this team that you really worry about is the center rotation, which got worse. I'm not going to lie. The center rotation did get worse. We lost Mamu and Jakob Poeltl with that back injury, and that contract just don't look great. But there's just no way that when you look at the Raptors lineup when fully healthy, you don't think they can match up with the Knicks or a Sixers or a Celtics or a Cavs or a Pacers. To me, they match up with any team in the NBA just because of the wing defenders, the length, and also the fact that now we are going to have a little bit more creation, a little bit more scoring, and a little bit more shooting on this team, at least in theory. Number 5, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves. Again, I'm not sure what consensus is on the Timberwolves right now. I've seen a lot of conflicting opinions, but I personally am a fan of what they did for the most part this offseason. I love adding LaMelo Ball. I like the starting lineup of him, Anthony Edwards, Ayo Dosunmu, Jaden McDaniels, and Rudy Gobert. I think that defense has a very high floor defensively and offensively. I think it'll be a very fun team to watch. The only thing you really worry about there is Ayo starting at the 3 because he's not like the best defender in the world, and he's a little undersized. He's not like a 6'9", 6'10" guy playing the 3 position, even 6'8". He's just not that tall. I think he's like 6'5". But I think the defense will be good regardless because you have a Jaden McDaniels, you have a Rudy, you have Ants who can probably lock in even more defensively now because LaMelo Ball will make his life a little bit easier offensively. I personally think as long as this team stays healthy with LaMelo Ball and everything like that, this will be a 50-win team and a team that is one of the toughest teams to beat on a night-in, night-out basis, and a team that is going to be tough to see in a playoff series because it's like, you know you're going to be facing a good defense, and then you have to have 2 defenders that are going to be able to see a LaMelo Ball and an Anthony Edwards, and then you're still going to have to worry about Ayo who can score, Jaden McDaniels who can score while locking up your best player. It's just going to be tough for anybody out west to beat that Minnesota Timberwolves team, and I do think they are a legit contender out west. Number 4, some of y'all are going to be mad about this one too. I have the New York Knicks. I know coming off a championship, some of y'all are gonna be mad, and I can't be mad at y'all for being mad, but I do genuinely believe some rosters in the NBA got better, while this one got just a little bit worse. I think the loss of Mitchell Robinson will prove to be huge for both their center depth and their defense on the back end, and his replacement is Andre Drummond, which I just don't really love. Other than that, though, the Knicks didn't really lose much. This is a roster that will have championship DNA. They have championship experience. They have an elite scoring guard. They have an elite scoring big, and they have 2 elite defensive wings. The floor of this roster is high. The ceiling of this roster is even higher. You know what this team's going to be. Number 3. I have the OKC Thunder. The Thunder are a team that I think everybody knew was going to be really high on this list. They have SGA, J-Dub, and Chet, and for as long as those 3 are there, they are going to be one of the best teams in ball. I expect this team to be a top 2 seed out west. I'm sure Shea will finish top 3 in MVP voting, and I'm sure everyone will continue to look at this team as an elite contender out west, or just an elite contender, period. But I do think the losses of guys like Lou Dort, Aaron Wiggins, and Isaiah Joe could at least hurt a little bit in the regular season, right? Like, especially if an SGA or a McCain or Caruso or Cason Wallace, if any one of those 4 guys misses any real time, their guard depth will be a little shallow, and they will have to start to rely on some of these rookies to see, or some of these rookies / some of these young guys to see if they would take a step. But assuming no injuries happen, they won't really have much to worry about. This is going to be a good team. And yeah, this is going to be the same, for the most part, the same Thunder team. They're going to be a good defensive team. They're going to have Shea, who's going to score at will. They're going to have J-Dub, who's going to be what you need him to be. They're going to be a scary team. Number 2, I have a team that beat them in the conference finals, the San Antonio Spurs. This is a team coming off a phenomenal season. They overperformed, and I think basically every single player you cared about had a great season last season. And I would argue they got a little better in the offseason. I love the addition of Tobias Harris, and I like the draft picks of Terrace Reed and Jaden Quintance, who I haven't really watched a lot of him because I don't think he played a lot in college, but I do know a lot about Terrace Reed as a guy that I watched play in high school and in college. He's a really good player. I think Spurs fans, maybe not this year, I don't know how much playing time he's going to get this year, but eventually I think Spurs fans are going to really love him and love him on your team. But aside from that, I'm excited to see how, like, a Steph Castle, Dylan Harper, Carter Bryant, how have these guys gotten better? How have they progressed? I think this team will cruise to 60 wins while being led by probably the best player in basketball in defense, in Victor Wembanyama, who's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year again and will have a real shot to win MVP. And now, on to the number 1 team in basketball, the team that had probably the best and busiest offseason of the NBA. It's the Philadelphia 76ers, man. On paper, obviously the best roster in basketball with Maxey, VJ, Jaylen Brown, LeBron James, and Joel Embiid. I think Tyrese Maxey is going to have a phenomenal year. I think he's going to be a guy where, like, people are expecting him to be like maybe the 3rd or 4th best player on this team, but I think he'll be closer to the 1st or 2nd best. I think he's going to be the guy that's going to lead the scoring for this team. I think he's going to be one of the leaders on this team, especially should Embiid get hurt at any point in time. But I like the depth. You have Anthony Simons, who I think is becoming underrated as well. LeBaron Philon, who could show you something. KCP, who just got to be better than he was in these last 2 years. And Adembone and Dean Wade are both solid players, especially Dean Wade. I think he's going to provide a lot of defensive versatility for this team. The only thing you really worry about with him is obviously the injuries, right? Will Embiid get hurt? Will a 41, 42-year-old LeBron James miss a lot of time? But if they don't, there's not a lot of worries about this team. This is a team that should cruise to being one of the top seeds out east if they are healthy. This is a team that should not cruise to the playoffs, but this is a team that in my opinion, there's no excuse for this team not to make conference finals because of this roster. All right, I love you. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for watching as always. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if y'all enjoyed this video. Let me know what type of videos y'all want to see. And don't forget to keep God first as always, all right? He loves you and so do I. Peace out.